to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Make a motion, we open the board meeting?
Second.
Made and seconded, all in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. All right, before we start, let me read my little spiel. Good evening and welcome. We're happy to have you attend the Select Board meeting. The Select Board meeting is a public meeting, not a public hearing. You do not have the right to speak at a public meeting as you would at a public hearing. However, it is the custom of the board to allow people to speak. We only ask that you wait to be recognized, be respectful to your neighbors who are speaking, and that you stay on track. We are recording the meeting minutes, so please state your name before you speak, for the record. Finally, if you have not signed the register, please do so before you leave. That's that. Thank you. First item, consideration and possible action on proposed contract with the Friends of the Library in which, this is too much to read.
Well, and I was wondering why we had kind of gone to that. It is a little bit more verbose.
Well, the reason
That's the way
that
they do it in Texas.
the reason I've done that is because I think if you just have library contract, for instance, on there, it doesn't give the public a good sense of what we're going to be talking about and whether or not there's going to be action involved.
All right. Fine with it.
Well, we could probably just straighten it down to be like proposed contract with the Friends of the Library regarding mowing and plowing. So it gives a little more, so when we do the synopsis, it might help with that.
Okay. I agree with you. But let's move on. That's right. All right, who wants to present this?
I'll keep just a little introductory remarks.
Okay.
So first of all, the important thing to know is that this is not a contract where we're going to be paying someone. It's a contract where someone is going to be paying us. And the genesis of this idea actually came from our facility maintenance director, who does a spectacular job. And so Chris Dutil takes his sons to the library on a frequent basis, and he was telling me this summer, I could do a better job mowing that property than is currently done. And he also thought that
Calling his bluff.
no. And I believe him. I mean, all you have to do is drive up to this property and see evidence of that. And we thought that there was also an opportunity where we might be able to relieve a little bit of the fundraising pressure on the Friends, because we think we can also do it at a lesser rate that would still cover our cost, but would be less than a private vendor would charge. And so they have been paying between $50 and $100 per mowing, and then $50 per plowing. And so what we're proposing is to charge $50 for the mowing and the weed whacking. And Chris is here, and you can ask him about this, but he assures me that he and another guy can knock out that property in about 45 minutes, and $50 would cover their cost. And then $50 per plowing. And that would be done on an as-needed basis. Once the snow stopped, we would continue, as we always have, to shovel the pathways and the walkways and the flat surfaces, and to spread sand and salt there at the library. So the librarian and Chris, who have a good working relationship, would continue working together to address the needs on an as-needed basis. And so with that, I don't know if anyone from the Friends might want to add anything to that.
Well, I'll see if I don't ask them.
Okay.
You want to, Friends, you want to say anything?
When we heard about this, we thought it would be a good idea because we were told that it would probably cost us less money and it wouldn't cost the town anything because we're paying for it. That was the reason we went ahead with it.
Sure. Good idea. Chris, can you do it for $50?
Mowing, yes.
How about the plowing?
Plowing was supposed to be $75.
So what we talked about with the Friends, initially I got some incorrect information about how much they were charging for plowing, and I didn't want to charge any more than they were currently paying for plowing.
So what are we going to charge for plowing?
$50.
$50. And smiling, does that mean you're happy with it, or?
So So I was given some incorrect information that they had been paying $50 to $100 per plowing, and so we said, okay, we'll just split the difference and charge 75, and then to come to find out that they were paying $50 per plowing.
Okay. Jack?
Just to be clear, is that per occurrence in plowing, or is that per storm?
So we will plow on an as-needed basis. Now, that doesn't mean, it won't be like the fire department where for every inch, we plow in order to keep it straight. So, so what Chris is planning on doing is once the snow stops falling and, the library's gonna be open that day, he'll go over and plow at that time. But we're not going to do it, just because it's snowing. We're gonna wait until the snow stops before we go over there and plow. Unless it's a big snowstorm and we got a lot of snow on the ground.
In which case we charge $50 per car.
Correct.
Okay.
The only way we charge $50 when the salt and sand
No.
Well,
No.
the town's always paid for that. That's something we have never done. Never done that.
Salt and
The
sand.
town is always, and making that path down to the back, down to the basement door.
Anything else from anybody? I have a couple of comments on this contract.
Go ahead, you go first, and then I will. I'm always gonna be the dirty dog, but that's all right.
Okay.
I got a couple concerns.
One of my concerns is, in the first paragraph, it says that the librarian, Belgrade Public Library's librarian, the town of Belgrade Facilities Maintenance Director in the town, contact from the Friends. It says how the order of the contact should be made. I think in order to maintain the chain of command, everything should start with the town manager. And the librarian should not be giving direction to another department head.
Oh, I'm not suggesting that she would be giving direction to the department head. The only thing that I was suggesting is so that it was orderly, since they were used to working with the librarian. If they said, hey, Megan, we think that the property needs to be mowed, and then she would work with Chris to find a time when that could be done, and so it's definitely not Megan instructing Chris on what to do, but it's simply them coordinating together on what would work for her in the library and what will work for him as well. And so I was just trying to create a chain where it was going to be as efficient as possible for communication for them, just to, since they're in constant contact with Megan to begin with. Now, if they want to, contact me, but I'm not going to know on a daily basis sort of what the condition of the lawn is over there at the library.
All right, I still think you should be the top of the chain. I think Chris will do a great job. I don't think it'll be a problem at all. But if the Friends have a problem, if the Friends want something changed or whatever, they should come to you, and then you direct the town employees what to do.
Okay, well, we can take out that paragraph.
Don't take it out, just put you up front.
Okay.
The other thing is, the next paragraph, frequency and size of area to be serviced will be determined by the librarian after consultation with the Friends and facilities manager. That change to the area should be pre-approved by you. Librarian can have her input, Chris can have his input, but you should do the rules. You're in charge. Correct.
Okay,
All right?
all right.
Well, can I interrupt?
Yes.
Should the size of the area change at all? I mean, is it sort of like, we'd like you guys to just plow these 3 spots today?
It probably
So
won't.
it should be,
probably
it should be a
won't, but-
predetermined area that's already being
Well, the
maintained.
plowing will be, predetermined. We wouldn't just plow half the parking lot, for instance. But over the past year, the back behind the library, the field, has not been mowed all the way to the fence of the Little League fields that are there. And so we talked about, is that something we want to do on a regular basis, mow all the way to the fence or not mow all the way to the fence? And frankly, I was just of the opinion, let's just leave that to the folks who are working there and living with that facility on a daily basis.
I think you either mow it or you don't mow it, one or the other.
Well, if they're happy with what's been mowed in the past, that's fine. But if there's a change, I'm just saying, if there's a change, it says right in here, that it's addressed in here, you should be the one that makes the decision. The librarian can have her input, the friends can have their input, Chris can have his input, but you make the decision.
All right.
That's what the town manager does. Manager, yes.
Well, I don't know. I guess I'm still sort of a little bit at a loss. If what's been done in the past has been adequate, then I don't know why we need anybody else interjecting with the size of the area. It should be the same size, so that you know what you folks are getting, and we know what we're providing, and it doesn't change.
Well, then change that to say that.
Right, well, that's what I'm
We will
saying
never
is,
change the area regardless.
well, or just say the predetermined area that was established in, you know, such and such a time. Because otherwise, the project could get bigger. They could be like, you know what, yeah, we really want you to mow it all the way down there. It looks great. And it may not work, so then it becomes a $75.
That in turn costs us more.
So the genesis for this is Chris would prefer to mow it all the way to the fence. I said, and I didn't want to micromanage that. And I said, if we think it needs to be mowed all to the way to the fence, mow it all to the way to the fence. But if some of it has some sort of natural growth behind that Little League field now, I think it looks fine. If people want to leave it that way at particular points in time, then I don't have a problem with that either.
Well, it's conceivable if they should expand the area, they should decide they want more area cut. That conceivably could cost the town more money than we're getting back.
Well, we're never gonna mow beyond the fence of the Little League field. That's the area that we're talking about, the area back behind the library.
Are we not mowing there at this point because we're just leaving it natural? So for bumblebees, butterflies,
Yes, you may talk.
Thank you.
Who are you?
We stopped mowing way back to the fence of the ball field because it was costing us too much money. So we cut back and did it as far as what it is right now. That was where those figures came for $50 each. So that, yes, that's plenty. There's no reason for it to go all the way back there now that it's grown up. Quite a bit back. And I'm making bushes back. Yeah, that's my thought.
Anybody else?
I'm down with us just doing what's been done. If that's what costs $50, and if that's what we're thinking, and no, it doesn't look like the golf course, but it isn't the golf course. And we need to have some wild areas that, it is for the bumblebees and the butterflies. The other one on the.
Yeah, I got a couple things.
Under the second item there.
I'm trying to
too.
figure that, did you?
Well, Mike, under the second item too, the sanding and salting is still part of that, and that should be, I think it was the snow plowing, shoveling, the sanding and salting wasn't part of that, it needs to come out, correct? Because that's already been provided.
Always done that.
Well, and the reason I included that is because I just wanted to make sure that everyone knew that that is a service that we will be providing, was just the sanding and the salting and the shoveling.
Okay, you ready now?
I guess so.
First of all, is there gonna be any problem with taking this work away from the private sector? You've already had it in the private sector, now you're taking it away from them. I believe there's some kind of laws about that, but you may wanna check that. The other thing is, what's gonna happen if, Chris hasn't plowed yet a year here, to see what it's really like. So he doesn't know. He can say he can do it. I just don't wanna hear in the middle of winter, you know what, I can't do this.
Or I couldn't get over
Or
there, and
can't
it's
get over
kinda
there,
dangerous
or the
over
truck's
there
broke
today.
down, because I know who they call. I sanded a good many times last winter because their sander was broke down. And I did it, but, well, I shouldn't say I did it.
It was done.
It was done. My sister's business did it with my truck, but that's fine. The other thing, he's already taken on the new place up to Belgrade Lakes to mow. His mowers are getting old. We hear about that every budget's done. I'm just a little concerned about this, and it's nothing against the library. Don't get me wrong. I'm looking out at the town of Belgrade's end of it right now. You know, if he has a mower breakdown and can't get there, you guys are gonna be screaming at us. I mean, somebody's gonna be, if that place isn't mowed, if you see where I'm going.
I understand.
That was some of my main concerns about this when I read this. And I spoke to Chris about it a little bit. I said, what are you, crazy? I mean, and I did. I asked him that because I said, you haven't been here a year yet. Wait until you get your feet good and wet, and then come back and tell us you can do this. But that's my main concerns right there. So probably, in this case, I'm probably gonna vote against it just because of that. That's my only reason. Thank you. I'm done.
Thank you, yes.
Well, but, you know, along that strain, if you're paying $50 at this point for each plowing, you guys need a new contractor. Anyhow, I mean, you know, mine will come back twice. If he has to come back a third time, then we're talking a little extra money, but he kind of anticipates you gotta open stuff up and then you're gonna have to clean it up if you've got a bigger storm. But he's not like, shouldn't cost $100. It's not a giant area for plowing,
No.
you know, so.
How many contractors have you gone through?
No, we did,
The point is that there aren't a lot of people around that want to do it, especially the library.
Would you ladies talk about your experience this summer with your vendor? Without,
Gonna put me right on the spot, aren't you?
well, I mean, it's one of the reasons why we're undertaking this.
I'm not sure we ought to go there. I don't think you ought to be talking about,
I mean, they just didn't have a good experience, which is one of the reasons why we're taking
Point
this
is,
on.
we don't want to in publicly chastise.
that's right. That's not even,
Because
no.
that's called slander and libel. We're not allowed to.
Let's just say that we're not happy.
That's fine.
Well, what do you want to do?
Well, in the past, no matter who you've had of those three, they've only come after snowstorms, and that's it. They've never come back. And then it's been, you know, whatever. And last year, some of that, even I shoveled it and I guess I didn't salt. I asked where the salt was, and it said wait for the town to bring some more, I guess, or something, I don't know. But, in the past, the person plowing, no matter who, has done it after the snowstorm. That's it. And the town, because the town does lease it, you know, from us, has shoveled the path for the basin.
You want my opinion on this?
Yeah, sure.
I think Rick's consultation is important, and yes, there will be breakdowns from time to time, whether it's a sander or whether it's a mower. There's no way of knowing when that's gonna happen. I mean, it happens now. Just when equipment gets used, it breaks down. You fix it, and we use it. It doesn't matter if it breaks down mowing the cemetery, or breaks down mowing the Center for All Seasons, or it breaks down mowing this place. This place, I agree that, we don't want to get in the business of doing plowing all over town, but, the town has a connection to this library. I mean, it's for all intents and purposes, the building's owned by you folks, but it's a town building that is functionally paid for by town funds largely, and, in the interior anyway. And so in this particular case, I don't see any problem with having Chris do it. And you're paying for us to do it. Chris has sprouted wings, worn a cape or something like that since he's been working for us, and I think we're pretty lucky to have him in that regard. I've heard that from a lot of people, so I don't have any doubt that if he puts his mind to it, you get in a routine after every storm. I know I do. I've got 4 or 5 different places that I have to plow, and it takes me all day to do what I do, but I have a routine that I do it in, and this place here obviously isn't gonna get the same treatment that the fire department will, nor should it. And so, it'll probably fall at the end of the plowing list, so to speak, but 9 times out of 10, if it's a big storm, the library isn't open anyway, so. So I don't have any problem with it. I mean, obviously, things have to be tweaked as the years roll by, but we'll see how that, I think it's worth a try, give it a shot. It'll help you folks out. We're being paid for it as a town. So I would say go ahead with it, see how it goes. Next year at this time, we might be talking about something different, and so, worst case scenario, well, I'm not gonna go there. But I was gonna offer myself as a backup, but I'm not really wanting to do that because I have enough to do, so, but if, I am on the library board, so, to some degree, I have a soft spot in my heart for library. End of story.
Chris?
The only thing I propose is that the money that they pay us, they're going into the general fund, goes into the facility maintenance fund, so that way we can, put towards, maintaining our equipment, with the money that we get from,
Can we do that?
I was just gonna say, that might be I think that's a gray area.
Well, why don't, Anthony, would you look into that perhaps, or check with our treasurer and see if that is a feasibility? I'm not opposed to that, if it makes sense,
As long as we can do it legally.
Yeah, well,
So-
obviously.
Can I make a motion that we table this until the following meeting? Because I think the contract as is presented today is not signable. Because there's been too many things that need to be changed about it. And also that we would need to see if there's any service that the town provides where we could divert the monies from one fund into another one without it being approved by the taxpayers, where we can say this money is to go here and it's going to be used for this. Usually there has to be that chain that goes along. Doesn't mean it can't happen after
The
March,
ones that
but.
the ones that I'm familiar with, it's usually, it's set up that way at the town meeting.
That's what I'm saying, is we may not be able to do anything specific like that until after town meeting, because we have to ask for permission to divert funds from one to
You
another.
have a hand up, Jack?
Jack Hudson, based on what I've heard here tonight, I wonder whether it would make sense to approve this or approve it as has already been suggested on a one-year trial basis, to see how it works out, and then review it in a year to either continue it or refine it or do whatever necessary.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking that myself, this is set up for multi-year. but-
3-year.
Yeah, but maybe we should do it for a year, see how it works out, and then we'll talk about it.
Sure.
Time to renew it.
So
I'm in
we'd like
favor of that.
we'd
But I
like to
think in the
revise
mean-
this contract one more spot.
But I think in the meantime, your motion to table has
I'll second that.
been made, to table. That's on the floor. Any discussion on the motion?
So we'll just put in the changes that we
The changes that have been
authorized,
discussed, yeah, all of them.
change the date for 1 year, and it should be signable.
And the chain
at our
of
next meeting.
command and the size of the
Yeah.
area.
Yeah.
And what is listed under services provided.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we just say that the area is limited to what it is now. Any changes we'll have to approve.
Yep.
Yep.
Any possible changes, that'll take care of it.
And I just want to make sure that we're succinct with the, snow plowing, shoveling, sanding, and salting, 50 per service. To read that face value looks like snow plowing 50, shoveling, sanding, salting, that there could be, and it's not going to be. So, that we may want to be like this is one service. And does it have to be shoveled, or do we have a snow blower so that could be made a little bit easier for?
No, 99% shovel. We can't.
But the pathway down to the basement, is that?
The town was doing that anyway.
Oh, I snow blow it up my hill. Right around the back of the house, it goes fast. I would, yeah,
Well,
so they were probably
whatever they've
shoveling
been doing,
it.
they'll continue to do.
I saw them doing it quite often, the people out there shoveling. And it wasn't the town that was doing it, it was the other guys that were there. They were there 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, they were shoveling by hand. 'Cause they did,
I mean, is it possible for us to put in there that it could be snow blowed, like that pathway, if possible? I mean, mine's much wider because I snow blow around the back of the house and down the hill.
I don't think we need to micromanage it that much.
Yeah.
We'll create a path. If Chris happens to have a snow blower with him, he can use it, if he can use it. But anyway, the motion is on the floor to table.
Yeah.
No further discussion, all those in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. We'll try next time. We'll put it on the next,
See you guys in a couple weeks. You're welcome.
all right, next item.
Thank you.
Consideration of and possible action on 2 requests from the Friends of Belgrade Lakes Village. Request 1, approving a warrant article to accept the benches and bike racks from the Friends. 2, approving the placement of a village project dedication plaque. You want to tell us what this is about?
Sure, well, you may recall back on May 21st, you guys approved the locations of some bike racks and benches in some other places. And so now the Friends are before you tonight to ask that you consider putting a warrant article before the town meeting in March to accept those bike racks and benches as town property. And then the second thing that they're here to ask about is just the approval of a placement of a rock monument. You have a picture in your packet of what that might look like on town property, that being on the north end of the village project on the west side of Route 27. And that spot would also include just a little bit of landscaping and a bench.
All right, let's take one at a time. Are you asking for all of the benches and bike racks, or just the ones that are on public land,
All of them.
including the ones on private land?
Diane Oliver, Friends of Beverly Hills Village. When we talked with Anthony a little bit about this, I thought there was gonna be a couple other items on here. We brought our certificate of insurance to show that everyone, we did what you asked us back in May to do. And that, oh, you had that already, all right, to make sure that the town was included on our liability insurance for the benches that were going to be on town property. So we've done that. I think we're getting ahead of ourselves because there is a contract, that we have to have with landowners to be able to go onto landowners' property, which I know that I have one copy of that here, that was sent to Anthony. He was going to check and make sure that we were able to do this. The Friends of Beverly Lakes Village would have the landowners sign this, and then it also says their successors, the town of Belgrade, so that we have this kind of thing covered before we move forward, so that the town of Belgrade, our successor, if that should happen. I'm not sure if there's any.
So I've had some correspondence with the MMA about that, and they have suggested that we check with a private attorney on that. Before I invested those funds, I wanted to see what the board's pleasure on that was.
All right, so that's how, that was just seemed like the order that I felt like we needed to go through.
And Diane, I think it's important for the board to also know that y'all's agreement is based on a document that the Department of Transportation uses for these sort of situations.
Right, so this document came directly from the Department of Transportation. We just wordsmithed it to include the Friends and the town of Belgrade. All right, so we'll wait on that. Do you want to talk about the asking for the benches and bike racks? I guess I think it's important that this document has to happen before you will be able to say whether we'll accept all the benches and bike racks. Am I right?
What document?
The
landowner ones.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Well, and
I would think you're
this
right.
is one of those times I feel like we don't have enough information in our packet. We don't have enough background information. We don't have MMA's recommendation. We're just hearing about it now,
Yeah,
which
so-
doesn't give us a whole lot of time to process it, unfortunately.
Exactly, so let's just talk about the placement of the monument.
Well, let's do the benches first. That my only hangup is if we can get around the private landowner issue, then I don't have a problem with it. And it sounds like you've been thinking about that,
Yeah.
okay? So if you're gonna be talking, MMA should be, that's what we have to talk to a private attorney about.
That's correct. And so again, I didn't want to expend the dollars until I knew that the board actually had an interest in potentially taking ownership of these items.
And I think we can consult with the attorney before the select board says we can do so anyway.
That's right.
So, you know, just a heads up there. But,
It's hard to do.
well, we can't consult with the town attorney without the select board being part of the conversation and the select board saying, absolutely, please, we're directing you to do so. So we didn't have a whole lot of background on it. Now that we are caught up a little bit, if, you know, can we see the agreement maybe that's proposed?
Maybe we can make,
Do you mind if I make copies of it, Diane? And do you have something else here for the placement that would be beneficial for me? You're so good.
And somebody else, so you don't have to leave, in case we want to continue the discussion. Somebody else make those copies.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, listen to them.
So, back in, I think May, when we were here, we talked about the fact that we were going to put up a dedication rock, or dedication monument per se, to thank the foundations that were the impetus for us to get the funds to do the sidewalks and the lighting for the road enhancement project. And to all the donors that contributed to that matching fund that allowed this to go on and happen. And I think when we talked about this, initially, we were thinking that, you know, what we call the bump out, the green space at the junction of the West Road and Route 27 was gonna look different. It was actually going to, I mean, we remember it with the sidewalk cutting through the green space and there really being, you know, a green space there. As much as I hate the fact that this road construction has lingered and gone on as long as it has allowed us to kind of see how things are going to develop. And obviously that space at the junction of Route 27 and the West Road looks much like somebody's front yard. It doesn't look like any dedicated green space. You know, I have to say that Cooper, the landscape designer for the town, for the DOT, who's been, you know, assigned to work with us, had told us from the very beginning that he preferred the space that we're now talking about, which is the space up, abutting the old spillway, the space before the dam, actually. So it's at the northernmost entrance. It's actually the very beginning of the sidewalks. So what you're looking at here is, I think you can, this is brick sidewalk in front of you. This is that wood abutment that is there now, which is the old spillway. So we're talking the old spillway. And what he has envisioned doing is putting a bench that would be facing, well, that would be sitting east and west and actually facing south. Okay, so this is a bench. Off of the sidewalk, again, the benches are placed on that bluestone, if you've noticed them in the park. So these would be like little bluestone steppers, okay, and he may have 4 in here, it might be 2, it might be 3 or whatever. And then down here a ways, this is the rock that he's talking about. And yes, you have one pictured, it really is just to be a rock that's, you know, definitely below knee high or whatever, and it's just sitting there with some, you know, green stuff or some daylilies or some PGMs, those little rhododendrons. I mean, how often do I get the landscape of plant? I don't know. I know what celery is.
Ketchup,
Yeah,
mustard.
mustard and pizza sauce, but yeah. But anyhow, you know, and to be truthful, he's toned this down a lot because what he sends out for design. But anyhow, so this rock would have a plaque on it. And the plaque, we are envisioning to say something like, in grateful appreciation for the generous support of the Joe Alphon Foundation, the Acorn Foundation, the Bill and Joan Alphon Foundation, the Peter Alphon Foundation, and the hundreds of donors who contributed to the Friends of Beverly Lakes Village Enhancement Project 2019. So, you know, again, it would just be some sort of a bronze plaque, much like, you know, the other plaques. I mean, obviously bigger than the plaques that are going benches and bike racks, but just something that would fit on that rock. And if, you know, if you're familiar with this, there's also, there's a lamppost here, you know, it's abuts the property that's adjacent with Carroll, so there's that, wooden fence which you folks put up, so this is town property and also state right of way, to some extent, because of where it sits adjacent to the sidewalk. So it's town and state right of way property, so it is town property. Some of the plantings here will kind of, detour anyone from, you know, trying to go down over the bank or whatever. Again, they're not gonna be high. Why we like this also is, it's kind of visually attractive to sit there. You have a nice view of the stream to your left, you have a nice view of Long Pond to your right, and then you start looking down into the village. We also think that, it lends to that gateway effect, you know, it's an entrance to, you know, to the town of Belgrade. And we heard that was kind of on somebody's mind here, so we thought maybe this would help with that too.
The planning and all that, is DOT gonna do that? Friends gonna do that? Who's gonna put the plans in?
Oh, so the DOT has, you know, done a design, so we're going to work with that design as much as we can, and, that's it. I mean, this is all on the Friends dime, if that's what you're asking, yes. It's
Yeah.
money that the Friends have collected to
To do this?
do this.
Yeah. Yes.
So my question is, once this is done, are you gonna come to the town and ask the town to accept it and maintain it? Because then we get into where we had, like, at the Center for All Seasons, and the Girl Scouts a while back had done a really lovely perennial garden, but it wasn't able to be kept up by the town. So it turned into just where they whacked it down, and that was the end of it, and I would hate to see
Right.
that go into this.
Well, again, this would be one of many along the walkway that we're, you know, would like to ask to give to the town. So yes, it would become town property. But I don't think this doesn't really have a perennial garden look to it. It's more like shrubs and greenery and things like that. You know, I don't think there's a whole, I mean, I know there's
Yeah,
all
things like-
maintenance, and we're talking
Yeah,
10
you
years
gotta
out or 5
yank
years
some
out.
dead stuff
Yeah,
out of
yeah,
there in the
exactly.
spring.
Yeah,
But it's
Yeah.
also within an area,
it's a town
the-
park, we have to maintain
exactly,
it anyway.
the town park, that's right. Yeah.
Well, there's a difference between mowing the town park and having to go in and actually, like, you know, pull weeds and maintain daylilies and some things, so that it looks nice.
Well, again, it's the gateway to the town, I would think it would be something that you would want to maintain to the town.
Wanting to and putting more stuff on Chris's plate.
Any other comments? Ernie?
I think it's more or less designed to be low maintenance and, you know, like if we have to trim the trees in the town parks now, or trim bushes or whatever, it's just normal maintenance, I think. It's not anything outlandish, I don't think it's, so I'm fine with it. It adds to the town. So.
Anything good?
Yeah, it's probably a good idea. Maybe people need to be, I know, it's a little unusual for me to say that.
He and I just, we just flip-flopped tonight.
Gotcha, all right,
No, I mean, it's,
there we go.
Carol, as the abutting landowner, it's okay with you?
I'm in favor of this design.
I think it's a good-looking design.
I think it is, I think it's,
I mean,
there's some thought.
I've seen some other architect work
Right.
at different facilities that probably shouldn't even been there, but I think they did a good job here.
Well, and you have to, I mean, we will keep it more maintenance, I mean, keep it carried away.
Yeah, I think,
Well, most of them do.
I think
money.
your point is well taken, but I think by selecting what you put in there, you can keep it as quick as maintenance as possible.
Absolutely. Poison ivy and stuff like that, you know.
Yeah, keep the people out. Any comments from any of you folks?
Well, is there any sort of action we're supposed to be taking on some of this stuff now, or we just?
Well, they're asking for permission to put that monument there.
I would say, I guess I'd make a motion that we would accept this plan for the village project dedication plaque. Yes.
Forget something to say.
Well, it's just, basically, we received another letter today, and I don't wanna complicate things, but we received a letter today from, again, Ken Cooper, this design person, and there are other benches and bike racks within the state right of way along this project, which the state requests that the town, submit a letter saying that you're okay with putting those on the state right of way, or asking that it be approved, and we're prepared to, draft the letter and whatnot and pass it along to Anthony, but again, it's in consideration that you're going to say that that's okay and approve it, so I don't know if you wanna do that separately, or if you wanted to know that also.
I'm fine with that.
Well, I think,
Opposed to that, or?
I don't think we have any problem with the monument, and I just assume
Right.
take the vote on that,
That's fine.
and then talk about the rest of it.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's do one at a time.
Did you make a motion?
I did.
Was it seconded?
I'll second it.
Made and seconded. Any other discussion? All in favor? 4 in favor, one absent.
So that's,
That was taken care of.
so the dedication plaque is all taken care of.
The dedication plaque and bench, this whole design.
Yes.
The whole design is
Yeah.
approved, yeah. That's all on town property, so that's not a
So
problem.
we don't have any problem with that.
Again, my only concern, and if these agreements take care of that concern, then I would be in favor of asking the town to accept those benches. The concern is make sure that we don't have a complication because it's town versus private property.
Certainly, and so again, if the board, if that's something you're interested in, seeing if our attorney can take a look at what the Friends have provided and see if that works, or if something else, some other instrument needs to be crafted, then I will certainly ask him to do that if that's y'all's pleasure.
Well, you've heard mine. How about the rest of you?
What have we got left in that budget? I mean, in the attorney's
In the
budget?
legal budget.
Oh,
Legal
yeah,
budget.
we were just going over the budget today, so.
Are you fine?
Yes, sir, we're fine.
I mean, I don't wanna spend a lot of money on that, but I don't think it would take a lot of money to, I
Well-
wouldn't think, but,
Can we vote on this without that question being answered?
No.
no, I don't think
So
so.
we need to ask the question.
Right.
Can
And
this wait?
what was MMA's,
You said go to a private.
right, and
About the
and
benches
why?
on private property.
Well, it's private property and state right of way, so it
The,
isn't,
the MMA's position was that, because it involves a private group, that they felt like they were issuing advice to a private group versus a municipality. I tried to explain that we would be the successors of this, but they said, see your private attorney about that.
So to satisfy the state's request regarding what's in the state right of way, that's on town property, we could.
No, so, what the state request is for all the benches and bike racks that are now going to be put adjacent to the sidewalks, so that's within the state right of way. They need a letter from the town saying that the town is requesting and accepting.
Basically, the town says, yes, we know you're putting a bench
Yeah.
right away in our town, and we.
Yeah, I mean, those things have been,
You're doing it without
yeah,
approval.
those benches, the bike racks, yeah,
But it has to be there.
they've been planned, they've been designed to be in the places they're in. We've already had this discussion to some degree, and I'm fine with authorizing a letter to the state that, that we're okay with this.
Yeah, so we're clear, Diane, we're talking about two separate questions here. One is just getting the state's permission for the placement of those, that the town is okay with that. And then the second question is, do we want to pursue the accepting of the bike racks and the benches?
the
And
third
if
part
it's
is the
gonna go to the
landscaping
town
permit.
meeting, the question will come up.
Absolutely.
The question will come up, so we need to have an answer. I think a phone call might do it.
I'm sorry, which question?
About placing these benches on
Right.
private property.
Right.
But, and it's the entering into the contract, because
Right.
before we can even, as Friends, put those benches and bike racks on those properties, we have to have this contract signed. And so I think what we were forward thinking is that we didn't want to have a contract signed to the Friends, and then in 4 months, ask, or 6 months,
Go back
ask that the town that we give these to the town, and now the town
Well, the MMA did see that version of it as well. And so, but their position was, this is really an agreement between two private parties as opposed to it being a town instrument.
It sounds to me like it's a private agreement now until such time as it goes in the warrant and gets voted on. And I expect because initially it's a private agreement, that's why they want an outside attorney to approve it. Because MMA right now would be approving an agreement between the Friends and landowner, and then once it goes to warrant, so if we get it all cleared up now, then it will make it much easier.
I feel confident that there's a way that that can happen and that Phil Saucier will be able to, wordsmith that in a way that protects the town from any sort of liability. It's just a matter of whether or not you guys want him to do that.
Well, as I said before, I think we need to have the question answered, because I'm not comfortable. I'm sympathetic to it, I think it's
Oh, no, I
great.
know.
Yeah, but but looking out for the interests of the town, that question has to be answered, because it will come up at the town meeting. I'm fairly sure it'll come up, somebody's gonna say, that we got a right to do that.
Yeah.
So, and I don't know the answer right now. I think we do, but I don't know we do.
Well, and so the only other part here, sorry if I may, that sticks in my head is we're requesting permission to enter people's property, and we're saying this is why we're going to enter. In the past, when that's happened to the town, what has happened is that the property owner was then upset that they weren't notified ahead of time, that on such and such a date, we're going to come onto your property and do X, Y, and Z. And it got,
Beyond that, is this a taking? Will we get a bill later on? We're gonna put our property on their property, is that a taking?
well, right, is it eminent, it's an eminent domain, and now
Well,
you've lost this corner?
It's property, but it's state right away, right?
But it's still their property.
I'd just like to clarify for a second.
Oh,
I- I
thank
know
you.
that.
Oh, over there being all quiet.
That means the state owns it.
Oh,
There's
really?
no state right away and private property owns it. In the state right away, the state owns it. Period.
Would you just identify yourself for the record, please?
Right.
I know
Jamie
you.
Andrews, I'm the regional manager for maintenance and operations in this area.
I know you, but the record didn't, so.
No, that's fine, but if it's in the state right away, that means that we actually own it.
So does that mean we can change this contract to say Friends of the Belgrade Public Library and its successor is the state of Maine?
Yeah, the offices would not be private property.
But would it be town property?
Private property, you don't have a right to.
Right, but this is like the contract that they, the state, I mean, this came right from, you know where it came, and you know what it's about.
Did it come from Kent?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who pays taxes
It's
on
for
it?
land, it's normally
Who pays
for
taxes?
landscaping or nothing such. But it just has to be rented and bike rack at this point.
Right, and it sure went to a legal spot, but if it's the state right away, and we own it.
We need to get the question answered, because look at the
Yeah.
discussion we have right here. Nobody can really be safe or sure. I mean,
Absolutely, I'll make a
you're
motion.
probably right, but
Well, we could go back to Kent. I mean, Kent sent it to us, Prescott State Maine, FOBLE, but, we'll just.
I'll make a motion, we get this checked legal.
I'll second that. Did we have a motion on the floor? No, we didn't.
Well, we did, didn't you make one
For the rock.
for the rock?
Well, I
No.
did- yeah, and we voted on that
Yeah.
already,
Yeah.
for that design. I'm trying to be clear, do we need a motion right now to authorize that the town knows that these things are going in the state right away to make it, to satisfy the state's concerns? I mean, it's kind of a separate issue, isn't it, or is it not? Is this all one?
How many benches we talking about?
We're talking about, four benches. Four benches. And then we were talking about one bike rack.
Although one right, that's not right away, so before then.
No, but it's still,
I don't want to
Yeah,
get into
there
more
is
arguments.
yeah.
There are eight, that's the.
So it seems like we need a motion to authorize Anthony to contact the town attorney to see if it's legal for the town to place benches on or within the state right of way. And how do we do so? Do we request permission from the state, who then dictates to us that this is acceptable to them, and then the benches can be placed. And then the follow-up to that is then if the town of Belgrade has approval, or Friends of Belgrade Village has approval, with the town of Belgrade as a successor, does that carry forward and we can put that as a warrant article when we are then asked to accept the benches as town-owned property?
Well, that's more or less the motion I was making, is authorize him to talk to the attorney.
Right, there's definitely two parts to
Yeah.
it. I don't want to have two separate conversations, even if it's one big issue.
All right. State the motion. I'm confused.
Okay, so the motion is that the Board of Select Persons authorizes Anthony to contact the town attorney to determine two things. Whether it is legal for the Friends of Belgrade Village to place benches within the state right-of-way. Pertinent, so would we have to head into an agreement with the state in order to make that happen? Would the town have to? Is that what we need to determine?
That's what the letter is.
Yeah, that's what the letter that Kent is asking for, because Kent has actually taken this map and he has, marked number-wise, coordinate-wise, your road
Okay.
coordinates.
Anthony, you have a sense of, what the confusion is, right?
Yes, and so I think what I would prefer to do is work with the Friends, check with legal for DOT, make sure we're all on the same page about how we need to move forward and what we need to do, and then contact our attorney and say, hey, we've talked with DOT and this is what we're trying to accomplish.
Right, so here's the three things that we need to have clarified, so that we can move forward.
Say that DOT probably is like, this is unprecedented, what is happening in this town,
Yes.
so,
Well, the whole deal is that.
Yeah.
exactly.
And the reason I say DOT is they may have some instrument that makes some of this moot. And so I just want to run it through their legal team just to
Their
see.
legal staff may have the answers for you.
Yeah.
Well, except they don't represent us.
No, I understand, but they may have a good and simple idea of how to accomplish this, that we can then ask our attorney.
What to ask our attorney.
Right,
What-
if it's truly in the state right away, it would be so simple, you just write a letter asking to, and we'll send you a letter of no objection. You're done.
Exactly, and I think that's what Kent is asking of this letter.
Right.
It's just the town is saying that we are putting these four
He's on the
benches
right track,
those
so.
coordinates, yeah.
A letter of no objection, that,
Still want legal opinion.
when it makes it fine.
Still,
Yeah.
we need to talk,
Okay.
we need to talk to
Contract between the landowner for
I may have one.
Carol. Please wait to be recognized, please. We still need to make sure we're on an even basis with the landowners, because I don't want, if I suddenly woke up and found a bench in my front yard, whether it's in the right of way or not, I'd be very upset. So
Yes.
I don't want, there are only 4 of them fortunately, but nevertheless.
Well, and didn't we agree that there weren't gonna be benches that were gonna be on private property, that there might be a bicycle rack where people were gonna,
No. I'm sorry, what you said, benches weren't, when we came and asked you, it was town property. So it's the town property on Hewlin Road where we asked for a bench and a bike rack, and you said no bench, just a bike rack. So the benches that we're talking, these other benches that we're talking about are like in front of the Lake Shore Hotel,
okay.
or in front of
Right,
the
so
Lake
that's what I
Home
was
Road.
just
So they're on-
picturing was like, it's not the people on the Hill and Road are gonna be like, look, we're sitting on the edge of your
No.
property.
These are landowners
Having a
that
cookout.
we have asked, talked with, they've, mapped out, they know,
Okay.
but it's just, this is the legal ease that we are
Yep.
trying to make sure that it's complete and correct. And again, we were trying to make it so it didn't have to be repeated, if
Thank you for that.
the gift, yeah.
And the donation will include the benches in the park, right? Everything, all the
Well,
benches.
the park, the park will be yours anyhow when it's turned over, so that's.
Yeah, but you're
included the
you're
park.
gifting the benches. So you let the returns in the other. All right.
All right, so motion's
Motion's
sort of.
made, I'll second, I'll second it.
And second, third, 3, 4 times.
All right, 3 or 4 times, we're all, all those in favor? 4, 1 absent, thank you, boy, that was like pulling teeth.
Yeah. Aren't you glad you came tonight? Thank
for
you.
all your efforts, really, you and everybody, all the people on the committee.
Yeah,
This is gonna
it's-
be really nice.
It's beautiful.
Yeah,
It really
they did a nice job so far.
This summer, you know, was all good stuff, so.
I can't wait to see when the light's gonna be illuminated, you know?
You haven't recognized that.
October 7th,
October 7th.
Okay.
that's what CMP
Great.
Oh, so you were trusting CMP.
No, I have confirmation from them. I have it in writing.
Okay, well, we know how good that is. Let's go, October 7th.
Okay, so hopefully we'll be able to come back in a week and
Yes, we should have an answer by then, and then we should be able to,
Yeah. Can you get that done between now and next
for the
meeting,
snow plows.
Anthony?
Yes, sir.
Good, thank you very much. All right, well, thank you so much for coming. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for everything. Can we, let's see, can we skip to the,
Yes.
the
because-
gentlemen are here for the salt?
Yeah, because Mr. Perkins isn't here anyway, so I was going to suggest we can talk
Okay.
about the
Let's,
salt.
let's skip to, consideration and possible action on proposed plan to replace no, that's the wrong one. Update from Maine Department of Transportation on salt well contamination issue. Gentlemen, is that why you're here?
The three of us are here.
The three, okay,
Great.
yep, all right.
Hey, Jamie, can you move a little closer to the front so we can catch up on the mics?
Thank you, Kathy.
Why were the rest of us not invited to this?
What's that?
Why were the rest of us not invited to this? Wow.
Good evening, I'm Jamie Andrews, I'm the region manager for maintenance and operations for West Coast Region. I'm Randy Sharma, I'm the superintendent of operations for this region.
And I'm Dwight Gowdy, hydrogeologist for the environmental office of DOT.
He's the guy who started all this.
He's a troublemaker right there.
Excuse me, talk among yourselves.
Yes.
Go ahead.
So we're here just to give you an update where we are with the contaminated wells from the year, a year ago roughly. Talked about doing all this testing and all that stuff for roughly $140,000, $150,000. We completed all that work. So Dwight's here to give you an update on that and any other pertinent information. There's a lot of things we don't know, and there's some things we do know right now today. But we had met earlier with Mike and Anthony last week, just to give them an idea of where we were, so we were completely caught up. So, if you would like to start, Dwight?
Sure, the area of interest is, we're calling it the Delray Triangle, it's Route 8, Cemetery Road, and 27. I think we're all familiar where the sand and salt piles have been stored historically in Stevens pits as well as adjacent at Maine DOT. It seems that the legacy associated with salt has migrated down through that sand and gravel aquifer. We now have about 15 residential and commercial properties that are impacted by salt above the threshold of 250 milligrams per liter of pressure. That is the level where you begin to taste some salt and you begin to see some corrosion issues inside the house itself. It extends down to Depot Road, essentially all the houses along 8 and 11, and it also includes Christie's and several of the properties along Route 27. So what we have done, as Jamie has indicated, we met about a year and a half ago. We laid out some proposals to look for a source water supply up near our property. We knew we had a good well over in the Stevens pit. We did some geophysics, some drilling, some exploratory drilling, and then followed up with some borehole geophysics. We were able to find a well that produces between a safe yield of about 50 gallons a minute, about 400 feet deep. Water quality overall is very, very favorable. So we are moving forward with that to permit it as a small community water system for less than 250 people. We're working with the Maine Drinking Water Program on that front. And so now the next phase is to start the design of the distribution system. And that's where some of the expense comes. We're currently looking at about $300 a foot for water line installation. We have about
3,300 feet that we'll have to run. So that cost alone is about $1 million. We have a similar initiative in another community where we've spec'd out, we're looking at about 1.6 million for those, for that well over there. And so it's comparable here as to resolve this issue, we're looking at the 1.5 to 2 million. We'd rather err on the side of caution and go a little bit higher, so if we come in a little bit less, people are a little more happier than spending above and beyond.
Can I, where did you say the drawing was? Like if we were had a little map of that area?
Yeah, it's in between the Stevens buildings on their pit and the main DOT lot. So it was threading a needle, and we were successful in finding a location up there that had bedrock fractures at depth. That was the idea. What we want to do is try to keep it at depth. It's a 400-foot well, and we've got fractures at about 350 and 380. So they're strong yielding wells, strong yielding fractures with no chloride in them right now.
So are we concerned at all that all of this expense is going to go into that same area where we have stored the salt and the sand piles for years? That it's not eventually going to make its way down to this well area, and then we're going to continue to recontaminate?
Unfortunately, I don't have a crystal ball, but yes, there is potential for that. We were kind of shackled because we didn't want to investigate on other people's properties at this juncture. We confined it to our own location. We have had some preliminary conversations internally that if we move forward and successful with permitting this location, we may close that facility and eliminate the salt storage up there. We would also suggest that other agencies that are focused on that area consider the same.
Is there any grants out there to help with it?
There's a potential, I've got a phone call into Maine Rural Water. Maine Rural Water is a sort of quasi-municipal entity that does help municipalities. And they also assist in not only the technical aspects of operating a system, but in seeking grants or loans, low-interest loans to finance.
I did check with KV Cog. They think that perhaps there may be some opportunity for a community development block grant. But that's speculative at best, and I do just want to temper expectations. I mean, they were talking the other day about a $2 million project, and so even if we were to get grants, I mean, it's not going to come anywhere close to the expense of the system.
Did your legal person speak at a school the other day, or she had suggested a possible compromise? What I'm thinking is, she had said something about you guys build it, we will operate it.
That's certainly something internally we've chatted about, understanding that the commitment from the municipality for this amount of money, and also understanding that the Department of Transportation is not in the water business. So yes, that we bantered that around as to potentially rebuild it, and then the town of Belgrade owns it and operates it.
And then 15, 20 years down the road, when the scenario that I just brought up happens, that's on the town completely. If that does indeed.
We would not operate our facility up there. Obviously, we would close that facility. And so then the decision comes to the town of Belgrade as to whether they want to eliminate that potential source.
Of course, in 20 years, it'll probably be my new residence up here on the hill.
I'm not sure if you'll be there.
Yes, okay.
Jack Sargent, Budget Committee, is everybody concerned here agree that a small community water system is the only reasonable approach to this problem? We have a reverse osmosis system here in this building. The literature is full of them for private homes. I understand there are problems with it. I don't really understand what you achieve when you take the salt out of the water behind that wall there and put it back in the ground over there. What you achieve, but that's something else again. I would just like to be clear that this is the only impact that's worth considering.
Have you considered anything, you know what he's talking about?
Yep, reverse osmosis for whole house, we've actually employed those at other locations. It's our last resort, it is very expensive. It's about a $50,000 initiative per home because we have to provide, we provide 15 to 20 years of maintenance. It's maintenance and it's high electrical cost to drive those. The water in this area though would require what we call a treatment train, and I believe that here it's a treatment train as well, where you have a water softener, which ironically uses salt to soften the water that is then removed from the RO. You do have to re-inject it. In many of these locations, if you're re-injecting into a residential or small commercial septic system, the amount of water, because usually you're for every 4 gallons you treat, you get 1 gallon of water, so it's an excessive amount of water you put into the septic system, tends to overload that system, and the salt itself will kill the bugs. The septic system operates on
Bacteria.
and so the salt has a tendency to do that. One of the things we also we steer away from is you're removing those minerals from, and I apologize for chemistry here, but you're removing all those minerals out of that water, which decreases the overall acidity of the water, which then tends to further deteriorate the infrastructure of the plumbing system and any ice makers, dishwashers. So there tend to be some problems down the road with reverse osmosis.
So that's actually a lesser option than building a small
Well,
water
as I said,
system.
we'll get 15, if you count that by 50, you're looking at about 750,000. The majority of these homes here are small, modular design, which also will require you to build an addition on these homes to house the treatment train, and then you gotta heat those additions as well. And so we're looking at those, we haven't actually put pencil down to paper, but we feel that would be very similar cost-wise.
I don't know, I think it's about half.
Well, with the 750, then you add the construction associated with it, it's gonna pump it up.
Jack?
A couple more questions, and I wouldn't expect definitive answers here tonight, but in doing this, putting the plan on paper, is there a map at this point of how this system would work? And has it been determined how people would get on? What's the threshold of getting on? I have salt in my water above the 250 milligrams per liter threshold. Down the road, somebody else does, but there's some people in between that don't test that. Do they get on or not? I think those are major issues. When you're building a system that can accommodate X number of people, but now you only have 15 people on there. I suspect, depending on what the conditions are set up, it's going to be a jump for people to get on this thing. I think it has big implications on the tax rates. The taxable value of a property that has salt contamination now is far less, I think, than it would be for one that's hooked up to community water system. What does that look like overall? What is the responsibility, if any, of the homeowner for the final hookup, the water system goes down the street? Does the town or the state or whoever pay to get it into the house and hooked up into the system and working? Or is there some homeowner responsibility for it? I think there's a lot of homework to be done before we start throwing numbers around to the town as to how much it's going to cost. Who? Is the property owner going to pay something for the water every month? Or is it just going to be a free gift? I don't know. But I think a lot of questions will come up here that need to be answered, and can be answered just by paper layout.
I think you're right, there are a lot of questions, I don't think we've gotten there yet.
Well, we can address some of them. We're trying to be very limited in the aerial extent of this. It's just to address the triangle area. The operator, and if we go the route with the municipality becoming the operator and owner of the system, you have control over your own destiny here. We're not going to expand this to capture houses further down the road that have iron or manganese issues. gardens that have been impacted by the operations of the state and the municipality. And so to resolve the well claim, and for a new statute, it is the responsibility of the state or the municipality to do so. And so in that case there, everything from the water main installation to the drop into the house is paid for by the state and municipality.
Is the Belgrade Central School involved in this?
No,
It doesn't extend down that?
no, no. Just two houses down Depot Road. Just down, it's actually the third house down Depot Road. And then it ends, it doesn't go down any further down 27. It's essentially limited to,
Is the plume moving over time? Have you been
Yeah.
able to trace the movement of the plume?
yes. One of the interesting things about, as I said, solution to solution is dilution. Salt is very heavy. It's a density gradient, so it tends to sink. And so that's why we're seeing some of these bedrock wells that are impacted further down gradient. As you move further away from the source, it does tend to widen out, dilutes, and is below that threshold. As I said earlier, we have minimized the amount of salt we're storing up there on that site. So source elimination is the best direction to take. And we've had conversations with the town about enhancing their housekeeping operations associated with their sand salt.
Did you?
Yeah. Since we met a year ago, how many more houses have you found that are contaminated in the last year?
We've only added one or two. I think the 15 is a pretty static number. We haven't gone back out around again to assess just how far. But as I said earlier, based on the chemistry, based on the hydrology of the site, and the fact that we have a large sand and gravel aquifer through here with a lot of water, we're pretty confident that we're not going to see it extend down to the school or further down.
No, did you have something?
I don't know, I think it just goes back to does it make the most sense to be creating a water system where the problem started in the first place? It's sort of like when we were building the town office in this gravel pit, and I had a concern about the water, and was it gonna be potable, and there was a salt issue. And I wasn't on the board, and this came through, and lo and behold, shock, salt issue. So, it just seems like it doesn't make logical sense to me to start a water source in the middle of where it was the beginning of the problem. Because it seems like logically it's going to be the same scenario, just a little bit further down, and then when we're drilling, we're creating entrances for this to move.
Doesn't sound like they have a lot of choice though.
You said you built a mineral?
So, the geology is unique up there. We're looking at fractures that are 300 plus feet below the surface. Relatively, the angles of the dip of those are such that they tend to go at great distances. It's not a steep angle. Those are actually we were looking to move away from because we know the steep angles are going to be recharged from above surface water. So the recharge for this well is probably quite an expansive, quite a ways away from the actual well.
Crapshoot, anyway.
It is a crapshoot, and what we're finding is, the water quality up there is very, very good.
Can I just ask one other thing? If you're gonna meet another time to discuss this, it would be beneficial to the whole select board to have been invited to participate, because I really hate coming in on the backside of stuff and not being given a chance to have the information.
Jack?
One other question. Has it established beyond all reasonable doubt that the origin of the salt contamination is the salt pipe, the state or annual salt pipe, as opposed to naturally occurring salt? Now, I answer the question. It's just this opinion of them that it is naturally occurring, approximately standard slope.
That's the first thing we analyze for.
Yeah.
Bromine is a constituent that you look for saltwater, for trapped seawater. We understand that there is a large extent of trapped seawater from the regression of the glaciers 10,000 years ago from the Mount Vernon area down to West Garden. Unfortunately, the 3:1 ratio of bromine to chloride does not work here. So it is not salt trapped seawater.
And can you reiterate too, there was the question of if any of it came from the salt priority roads, and what was it you said about the bromide in that situation? Because those roads are the ones that the state has determined were salt priority.
Bromine is seawater, not the salt that's used in the road.
So the salt that is used on the roads, you had, at the last time that you were here, you had explained there was a different level. And can you reiterate that? Because that was one of the other things I've heard is that initially there were a few wells, and then one of the wells that was taken care of was recontaminated. So then there was the question that folks have asked, these are salt priority roads, so how do we know that this is entirely, split between the town and DOT, or has this been exacerbated by making these salt priority roads right around that area?
I'll address the question about the impact as well. We were successful in taking the bedrock well here on Route 8 and placing it into the overburden. And we were successful in finding a well that had low chloride. Unfortunately, the property owner went to Florida, and came back in the spring, called us back out, and we noted that his chloride levels increased significantly. So we speculate that the chlorides are coming from the re-injection of our outflow system from the sockets, which impacted that well. And with respect to the salt priority, what we typically find in a well that is impacted by our operations or municipality operations, the levels tend to be in the lower range. As you find a salt storage area, the levels, obviously, it's a concentrated source area, it's a year-round source area, those levels tend to be a little bit higher. And so we have seen some very high levels up on the hill, and as you would expect, it again to degrade as you move further away from that. And in fact, to address the salt priority, we always look at that, but if you look at these wells that are particularly on the Route 8 and 11, as well as on 27, they're uphill of the road. So I will say 6 years of college have taught me life flows downhill. And so, that's one of those things where you look at those houses that are up gradient, so the likelihood of water coming from the road is probably very low for impact of those wells.
Well, water coming from the road, but salt priority to snow melts, concentrates in that area. So it's not unlikely that some of that could be coming from some of the salt priority.
Yeah, I would say that there's a potential for that. One of the benefits we see in our anti-icing versus our salt storage initiatives is it fluctuates during their spring and summer. Obviously, if you're no longer applying salt, you begin to see the decay of that, whereas the converse is you don't see that drop because it's a steady state source. And we really haven't seen those drops around here.
They're being monitored regularly, or how many water samples are we talking about?
We, right now, we're just in a maintenance standpoint, so we are doing it probably on an annual basis right now.
So we're not actually seeing if there's a fluctuation.
We've got several years of data on this already.
I'd asked that question before, because that's what I thought.
Well, I was like, once a year doesn't tell me spring and fall, but.
And you gave the same answer, so you did well.
We are, I will acknowledge, we are doing some salt claims further up 11, which are unrelated salt storage, and those are more very characteristic of their well in front of the house, septic system in back, the classic main home built close to the road, and we've seen some, unfortunately, some shallow fractures. Older homes, the casings aren't as deeply set into bedrock, so they just become more susceptible to that.
Jack?
One last question for me. Was recently, I'd say recently, but within the last several years, drilled in the cemetery, the cemetery water, is that involved in the testing?
No. It only, state statute requires only potable water supply.
I asked the question because I'm told that that's been filling the foliage, filling the grass, and so forth in the cemetery.
No doubt, I can't speak to the design of the well, but it is very proximal to the source areas. But keep in mind as well, cemeteries have their own unique cocktails of chemicals. Obviously, there's that.
I have no expertise in this area, but I'm told that that well was drilled down, cased, and the casing extended down into the rock, right, so that some of the feet. And when it was first drilled with the salt contamination, discovered that there was some sort of addition to the casing. Can't see that at all. Apparently,
There are some ways, we have a variety of tools in our tool bag to address these. One of the most common, as I said earlier, is to actually camera the well, to try to identify the fractures that are in the upper reaches, and then you seal those off with a liner. And the intent there is to say you're not gonna get water coming, recharging that well from the light source.
that sounds like what I heard.
So that well in the cemetery was drilled just a few years ago?
Not too many years ago. Yeah, maybe you can tell me, somebody else can tell me, tell us more accurately.
I think the town had that tested too.
I was just saying, with the test, because I've received permission to use our water
Yeah.
because they were killing flowers and stuff. So I assume you tested it this year too, probably.
I don't think probably got tested this year because they haven't used it. Shut right off up there.
Does anybody know when that was drilled?
Quite a few years ago,
Eighties?
probably. Maybe 90s. Probably look back in the record to find it. Sure, here in the town someplace. Town must pay for it through cemetery. I don't know who drilled it, I don't even remember.
Have we exhausted this now? I don't think there's much more.
Pretty much.
Not much more we can do tonight. Unless you gentlemen.
Well,
have anything more.
maybe one last question, Mr. Chair. What happens next?
Well, the next step is we'd like to meet again at some point, because we need to get on the phase, which is the design. Get on to the design phase. Because right now, we're at the standstill. I mean, we've done the testing, we have all the whole, this is where we're at. So in the interest of, people that are contaminated, the next step would be design.
Can you perhaps set something up with Jim, right? Yeah, Jamie. Set something up, but it should be with the full board. Okay, in other words, set a meeting up so we can start talking about design, although we're gonna look to you for the design more than us. but-
Sure. I still know, I think from based on our meeting, I know the onus was on me to sort of flush out some costs, relative to this, and nothing down to a nat backside, but at least something to give you an idea of what we're talking about. I'll certainly try to work on that, sooner rather than later. And as I said, we did reach out to Maine Rural Water, it's a matter of, changing the voicemail back and forth, so, but we'll pursue that further as well.
Our plan would be grants again, right?
Yeah, we have a consultant on board that we've been using. They've actually designed, or assisted in locating the water, the current well up there right now. They have an engineering staff that's capable of taking this all the way through to fruition.
Just often, would you like them to attend in case there are any technical questions for the design consultant?
I think it may be premature at this time.
Yeah, I would wait till you get a design and maybe,
Just in case there are
Okay.
questions.
that might,
Just work a date out that's convenient, work it out with Jamie, Anthony. It's convenient. We'll have a special select board meeting for that, and that'll be the only item on the agenda. Okay? Because that'll take a little while. Is that agreeable to everybody?
have to be.
You have any choice. Get my hole ready up there, will you?
Okay. I'm gonna be up there Thursday. I'll see how deep how tall are you?
I'm shrinking all the time. All right, well, yes, Jack. You said that was your last question.
Yeah, this is, that was next, and I'm sure this has been brought up and probably a different answer, but are we too far away from the end of the adjusted water system to consider hooking on to it?
It's approximately 6 miles, and if you do the $300 a foot times the 520, 52, 82, it quickly adds up.
I do have one more before we go.
Yes.
Jack, have you guys ever thought about maybe hooking into the pond that's across the road? I understand that spring fed.
We do have some impacts along this side over here as well,
On this side of the road, right?
on both sides of the road.
Really?
Yep. We did look further down Depot Road, there's a couple of gravel pits down there that supposedly one had a spring.
We came down, yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, we've sort of chased a couple of other different options around. As I said earlier, we gotta go where the geology is. We looked at a sand and gravel because that's the easiest, most efficient way to get a large yielding supply.
But what I'm talking about, across from Christie's down here, there's a pond there.
Surface waters are becoming increasingly challenging from a public water supply standpoint. You usually have to have a treatment system involved in that, maybe a sand filter or something along that line. So I think it would be,
I wonder, dollars and cents wise, I wonder if it would be less expensive to do that.
the biggest expense is not finding the water or getting, it's moving the water from point A to point B.
Absolutely.
And that's the challenge. So, we found a well up here, people would argue that 150 is expensive, and I too would say, just coming out of my pocket.
Yep.
But when you start looking at the $1.5 to $2 million overall cost, it's a very minor aspect of it.
You answered my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm done.
Good, thank you. Jack, you done? Okay, Jack's done.
We're all
You're
set,
done.
And
Jack.
Jack, so are you in the triangle here?
Pardon?
Are you in the triangle?
Right now he is.
No, he's up on the hill.
No, I think when he was using that, he was just being,
Yeah.
like, using an example, like, I have it in my well and my neighbor does, but in between, but not, do you really have a salty well?
I think that once the system is established, everybody and his brother is gonna wanna be on it.
Oh, and
And I
they're
don't
all
know
gonna
how you-
want for the town to
I see.
test their water.
You separate the wheat from the chaff. I just don't.
Well, maybe knowing that they're gonna actually be paying for their water as they're using it might be a deterrent from people wanting to hook onto it.
That needs to be kind of upfront, I
Yeah.
think.
That hasn't come up yet.
Well, we have, we made, to follow up on that, we have reached out to the PUC, so the PUC has said that if you do charge for water, then they become involved. So it does become a regulated entity, once you do charge for water. And to address your concern about expansion, keep in mind, it's going to be just essentially a triangular distribution system, and so, you can only add to the properties that are in that area. It's not, if somebody's further up in the village, it's not gonna be able to tap into this.
What is the reasonable potential within the capacity of the system?
We estimate that, all the properties that are in this triangle area could easily be serviced by this well. If every property had a,
That encloses 250 properties, so that it can give you some idea of what the potential is within the triangle. I'm guessing with the availability of city water, it's going to be desirable for a number of lots.
but the operator does have, a say on who they extend it in. So there's that potential.
That's where it has the town need.
We'll have another chance to talk about this at the special select board meeting.
Yep.
But anyway, but thank you, gentlemen, for coming in, appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen.
we'll
Hey,
talk
gents,
again.
will you guys sign in over there before you leave,
Sign in.
Or sign out.
or sign out?
Good. Carol, are you waiting for anything on the agenda?
I am,
What?
I was concerned over the auto business.
Okay.
Well, and Mr. Perkins is not shown at this point. I'm wondering if he is, so we might just have to hold the computer discussion until the next meeting.
Not the computer. No, the graveyard.
No, I'm just talking about, he was supposed to be next on the agenda, but I don't think he's gonna. I
Oh,
don't
okay,
think he's
well,
gonna
we'll
show.
table that.
Okay.
We need him to, talk about upgrading and replacing the
Yes,
computers?
yeah, it's some technical stuff that I want him involved in the discussion.
All right. Then let's do,
For the graveyard?
let's go to the
All
graveyard.
right.
And we'll table that other.
Halloween.
Table C. We don't need to vote on it, we'll just table it.
Right.
Authorizing an endorsement action on an illegal auto graveyard on Castle Island Road. Approving a warrant, we'll take one at a time on this too.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And unfortunately, Gary couldn't be here tonight, but I'm sure you're all aware, he's been looking at this lot on Castle Island Road for many months now. This preceded my arriving in early June, or July. There are 19 junked automobiles there, and it's gotten a lot of attention and a lot of concerns from the public. And so Gary sent them an initial letter on September the 5th, giving them 10 days to address the violation. We saw no action there. We then consulted with our attorney, who suggested an updated template on the letter that we've been using. We sent that letter via certified mail and gave them 10 days until October the 1st to remove the vehicles or apply for a permit for an auto junkyard. They've moved a few of the vehicles off. The owner of that property came by today and wanted more time, and I told him, I said, we have been exceedingly patient with this, and I'm afraid if I give you another week, that's gonna be another 3 weeks. I said, so I'm going to recommend to the board that we initiate some enforcement action here. I said, the good news is that the enforcement doesn't happen overnight, so if you can get the vehicles off your property by the end of the week, then you're probably golden. But the recommendation is, because we've given them so much time, probably too much time, quite frankly, that we're asking the board to allow us to initiate the enforcement action.
Been quite a few complaints about this too.
In fact, I had a resident of Rome who popped into the office the other day. He said, I was just driving by and I got tired of looking at that eyesore, and I just wanted to come and see if y'all were doing anything about it. So not even one of our own citizens, but someone from a neighboring community concerned about it.
All right. What's your pleasure?
Well, I live on the Castle Island Road, and I would make a motion that we extend this enforcement action as stated here in this certified letter, and move ahead with it.
I'll second it. The motion is to initiate enforcement action, right?
Yep.
Motion's to initiate enforcement action on this graveyard, this auto graveyard. Any other discussion?
And they did not apply for an automobile graveyard permit today?
They did not.
Because initially they weren't their cars.
Initially what?
Well, they weren't their cars. The
Yeah.
story changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, the property owner says it was a friend of his, and he's been trying to get the friend to remove it, and the friend won't, and so that's not our
So how
concern.
many did they remove from there?
I haven't seen any, doesn't look like anything's
I
happened.
didn't think any had either.
Gary went by yesterday, and none had been removed. The guy said that they removed 6 of them today, but
Well, he might have today.
Maybe today, I don't know, I didn't notice.
I'm not even there.
All right.
But, he needs to get
Doesn't
his
Any other discussion?
act together.
Okay, the motion is to initiate enforcement action. All those in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you.
Yep.
Approving a warrant article to repeal the town automobile graveyard ordinance. That is, I understand there's to make inconsistencies with the new state law?
Correct. When we asked Mr. Saucier to get involved in this, he went to our graveyard, auto graveyard ordinance and found that it was outdated because it includes some references to some statutory provisions that have since been repealed. And so he suggested one of two options. We could repeal the existing ordinance and then just follow state statute, which, addresses these sort of issues. Or we could replace the existing ordinance with an ordinance that not only includes the state statute provisions, but also has any additional restrictions that the board may want to place on auto graveyards. And so the second page of your memo mentions some of these, and that is that, you can have some additional environmental standards and some screening that the state law does not require if you wanted to repeal and replace this ordinance.
Does this have any effect on what we just voted on?
No, sir.
Two separate issues?
Two separate issues. One just sprouted from the other.
Discussion, questions?
I think it's part that would make sense for us to make sure that our ordinance
It's current.
is updated and current.
Either that or,
reflective of-
as was
If you don't
suggested,
have it, one or the other.
either that or, as
No,
was-
I think we gotta have one.
No, but if it isn't up to date, it's not worth a nickel,
Right.
You're gonna probably lose in court.
KV Cog able to help us in drafting a memo, an ordinance?
I bet their planners probably could do that.
I bet they could
Yes, sir.
too.
Or they could at the very least give us advice on if we need another ordinance, or if just using the state,
Yeah.
what does it say here, just using the state laws is enough. I haven't looked over our current warrant article to see if we, if there's
So-
specific things in that are unique to our ordinance as opposed to the states that we want to sprinkle back in, but
So if we don't have an ordinance, what you guys can consider is only where the junkyard is located, the auto graveyard is located in relation to the road.
Yeah.
So if you want other restrictions, like I said, if you want those screened in a certain way, that would require an ordinance.
Well, you need to look at updating our ordinance. if we have one,
Yeah.
so.
I mean, I think
Well,
that's-
but I mean, if there's specific things in our ordinance that we want to continue, but if the whole ordinance is outdated, then we just throw it away and go with the state, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know if there's anything specific. When people come before us for an actual graveyard license, that's when we address, the distance from the road, and, do they have the proper, facility to do that and all that kind of stuff. In this case, that what we just authorized the enforcement on, they're not even on a graveyard, so it's illegal, so.
So I just want to be sure that I'm clear on this. So we don't have a copy of our existing automobile graveyard ordinance. These would be proposed changes, but I don't know where they would go.
No, these are not proposed changes. This is just language in,
State statute.
from the MMA that explains sort of what you can and can't do with an auto graveyard ordinance.
Right, so is some language that better explains what these additional restrictions might be.
Well, and the third paragraph there says that the state law authorizes municipal ordinance that impose additional environmental standards. So without that ordinance that specifies those additional environmental standards, the only thing that we can enforce is the state statute, which again is just the placement of the junkyard in relation to the road.
Carol?
My concern is, I would think it makes sense, obviously, to review it and create our own, because I'm concerned about watershed issues. And this graveyard, right now, you've got everything feeding down into Long Pond, but make sure that whatever we do, or whatever we have for a statute, addresses very specifically, we might say if it's within so many feet of the stream, or what, whatever, that, my concern is that we tighten it up to make sure it also addresses watershed issues. Because we have to do whatever we can to
Absolutely.
I assume you got pull the planning board in on this too.
Oh, yes, sir.
I think it would be in ours.
Yeah.
Yeah, in fact, I'm having lunch with Peter Rushton on Friday, so we can discuss this.
Okay, so you go ahead and do the, you'll go ahead and do the research and we will talk about. Okay. Jack?
In doing research, it's been all over the paper recently, as I'm sure most of us know, that Rome has been going through a big issue on junkyard, getting a junkyard cleaned up to the depot junkyard, through the Route 135 intersection, and Route 27. There may be a German too, interest for Belgrade and how that's progressing. I'm just wondering whether it wouldn't be a good idea to talk to the code enforcement officer or somebody else from the county for that, in the process of deciding what to do here.
Well, we've got I guess we've got a pretty good relationship going with first selectman down there now, so wouldn't hurt to talk to him.
Okay.
Speaking of that, I thought I saw something on here about the, did I miss it, on taking over for them or covering them on auto registrations and all? It's not on the agenda, am I missing?
We did that last
We
week.
did that
That was
in
on
the
the
last
last
meeting.
one.
Oh, I thought we did. Okay.
It's in
it
the
was-
synopsis.
It's in the synopsis, that's right.
Did we get a synopsis?
Yeah.
Where is it? Oh, sorry, I was wondering. I thought we were-
All right, so I assume we're not going to
I do
skip.
need a hard copy though, because I can't do the newsletter thing without it.
So are we, where do we stand on approving a warrant article to repeal the automobile the ordinance that we currently have?
Well, we've asked Anthony to do some research on what a new ordinance would look like,
Okay,
and we'll have to, when we see that, then we have something to vote on,
all right.
I
okay?
think if we have the state ordinance and our current ordinance, that
Yeah.
we're.
So we're gonna get
Put
copies
the
of
two
that. We're
together,
gonna put the two
with the
together.
planning board's
Yeah.
help, and come
Okay.
up with something that's more
That
reflective.
may take more than the end of all here, but,
Oh, yes, sir, I think
yeah,
that'll
we should
probably take.
have a draft to deal with, to look over.
Yeah.
Okay,
Well,
then.
and obviously, a new ordinance would have to go before the town
Oh,
meeting,
yeah,
so.
certainly, but-
So we got, well, I'm just saying that because we got some time in order to
Thanks,
craft that
Carol.
ordinance.
Have a good
Thank you,
night.
Carol. All right, back to the agenda. I assume F is, since the CEO's not here, nothing to report for him.
Correct.
All right, so we'll table that one. Can he make the next meeting?
He will be here at the next meeting, he promised.
Okay. Consideration, possible action on a request for 2 burial plots for non-residents Stephen and Ann Smith.
So the Smiths have owned property in the town of Belgrade since 1997. One of the ways that a non-resident can qualify to purchase a burial plot in our cemetery is that they must own and have paid property taxes on real property here for a period of not less than 20 years, and the Smiths meet that qualifier. So they are agreeable to paying their $250 per space, and so we recommend approval.
They are gonna pay the $250?
They are.
Yeah. The letter said
They-
50,
they-
but he corrected
yeah,
that.
Yeah,
Okay, I was gonna say,
they reconsidered.
Yeah, when we told him you 250 or nothing.
because I went through, with this with my son that was probably involved in that when it was written, and he said the way we got the letter first, that they wasn't qualified. And now, if it's 250, he said they are. Yes. Okay, I'll vote for it.
Okay. Motion, I'll make a motion that we approve their request for 2 burial plots.
Second it.
Made and seconded. Any other discussion? Okay.
Good.
Okay, all those in favor? 4 in favor, 1 absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And with that, we're on the warrant.
Keep that warrant together this
I
week.
got it, I got it.
By the way, when you
And we
put
have
this,
2 of them, the ones.
when you're putting this book together, put the manager report should be in the back, not right after the, okay? I mean, you even have a divider for it.
Did you miss this, or is this something that was missed?
Well, that's what I'm talking about, that's the manager's report.
okay.
Normally, we do that after.
All right, yep, okay, yep.
See?
Yeah, I'm confused. All right,
Alright, so warrant
Thanks, Phil.
number,
thank
so
you.
warrant
Thank-
number 107, it's a reprint? Why is it a reprint?
Looks like it's been done a
Oh,
couple
but
times.
because,
No, the back page is a reprint.
because the town manager had something thrust in front of him and he absentmindedly signed it, and so then it had to be reprinted.
Well, no, it's all reprinted, not just the back page.
Well,
Well-
I'm telling you, I accidentally signed it, and so then I had to ask Mary to reprint it.
Okay.
Which one did you sign, 106 or 107?
The one that's before you right now, not, which is
106.
106, okay. That's
I
for
have
the tan.
107.
Yeah, it was 107.
Okay, we got 106.
So,
in
so,
front of us.
oh, maybe I handed it out of order. We have two. One is the tan and the other is the normal.
Let's do the tan, that's the easiest one.
Okay.
Alright, so
106.
So warrant number 106 in the amount of $2,027,172.60.
I'll make a motion to accept that.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor? 4, 1 absent. Good, now we can do,
Alright, warrant number 107, in the total amount of $19,411.31.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
any comments, questions?
On page 6, we talked about this once before, is what is we're paying Shauna Foy still, you know, how long do we continue to pay her, even though she's gonna stay on for a while longer, helping? What's the status on when we no longer need her?
I have not asked Mary about how long, but I will, how long we anticipate needing Shauna's help. I do know that every time she comes in, we manage to.
I know she's a big help, and it's
Yeah.
wonderful, but it's just,
Yeah.
you know, when,
Okay.
at some point.
Let me ask Mary about that, and then I will let you guys know.
Diminish, so. That was my only question.
Anything else? I've got a couple. Page 1, Select Board, V Chair, Vice Chair, the nameplate, didn't we pay for that already?
We did.
Well, why are we paying for it again?
That was the,
That was your sign there,
yeah.
but I know that came up several weeks ago.
Yeah?
I don't remember that one. I remember yours did.
Well, mine was back in March.
Well, I wasn't at the last, maybe it was the last meeting. I
No,
didn't-
it was a couple meetings ago.
I don't
It just
recall
seemed like
that
it
one,
was
but-
even more than a couple meetings ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, just make sure it's,
Just check it.
Because I
see.
remember we gave him some grief about it, like, ooh, ah.
All right, we had a big ceremony, yeah. All right, good check on that one. Peninsula, oh, wait, they're what, it's 2 different things. Yes, oh, Central Maine Disposal, Central Maine Power, never mind, that takes care of that one. Okay, page 3, David Hollowell Construction, recycled cemetery headstone. What is that? We recycle headstones now?
No, what he did, he bought some recycled hot top to put under the headstone. That's what that's supposed to be.
And that's to stabilize them, Rick?
Yes.
Well, that's fine, it just, yeah, okay, now that I understand it.
Actually, you'll notice some.
That's how we're saving money, we're just, you know,
Yeah.
when you're done using it, we'll grind it up and give it to somebody else. as
Take your
new
name off of
headstone.
it, yeah.
Just extra
I
sketch.
would, if that would make any money.
Hammond Lumber Cemetery Maintenance, would they maintain it up there for us?
I think they
No,
bought-
that's just buying supplies for maintenance for the
On hand.
cemetery.
Okay. Who is Paul Yule, or Hool? Oh,
Charlene's husband.
Yeah, so the check is cut to her husband as opposed to her,
Whose husband?
Charlene, our deputy
I don't know,
clerk.
I don't know why we cutting it to him instead of her.
I don't know, but I'll ask.
Because does that make him an employee of the town?
I would not think so.
Well,
If we're cutting him a check.
check that one up too.
Yeah, let me look and see if there's any.
Maybe use his truck or something.
Page 6, Portland Labor Law. application for somebody, but I'm not sure why. Mary Vogel. What's Portland labor law?
I'm sorry, I was looking up the fuel.
Where did you find that?
Page 6, right down the bottom. Under Mary Vogel, Vogel Mary.
Oh, I bet she went to Portland. It's a mileage thing.
Yes, that was,
So,
yeah,
that was a
that was
mileage
mileage
going forward.
reimbursement for some training.
If you want
that she
training,
went
okay, that's all I want to know. I'm done. You'll check on those other two things.
through. Okay.
You want to take them out now and put them back in next time, or vote on them anyway?
You probably don't want to, because it'd be late, and then we get a late charge or something.
Well,
Well, maybe not, but.
So when we have the correction, like the nameplate,
yeah,
so the total should be changed on that. So we're signing it already with the total not reflective of what it should be.
yeah.
We used to get some sort of a correction.
We can do it by hand, we can correct it by hand, I think. But the name, I don't think they're gonna get late charge on the nameplate, and just the rules, not gonna charge us, shouldn't charge us anything. We just have a question, why are we paying him instead of Charlene?
Should have it in the bills there someplace, wherever they are.
It was just a mileage, chart. Yeah, yeah, I mean, it had her name on it, so I can't, I would have to ask why the
Okay.
check is being cut to her husband as opposed
It's
to
a
her.
legitimate charge as far as you're concerned.
Oh, yes, sir. She did definitely go to the training. It was for IFMW training.
Look into who we actually make the check out to. It seems to me it should go to him, not to her, not to him.
Okay.
Okay. And then the nameplate, do you have
Okay.
anything in there in the nameplate?
It just is an invoice.
Did we not
But,
pay the
but
first
I don't
one?
know if we paid it previously or not. I mean,
We
It was
did.
on, it was on the warrant.
Yeah, it was on the warrant.
okay. I mean, we
I
have it,
remember the comment.
yeah, we have an invoice, in there, so I can't speak to that. So if you guys wanna hold off on paying that $16, then.
Let's
then-
take that
Yeah.
$16 out. I think
$16
it's
out.
probably a mistake, frankly. So get the, deduct 60, was it 16 even?
Yes, sir.
16 even.
Deduct that from the total. Indicate that we're tabling that on the original. And deduct $16 from the total, and then we can move on. Wow, that's pretty cheap.
Yeah. We spent the big one just a few months ago.
All right, so the amount of warrant number 107 is gonna be $19,395.31. So should we rescind our earlier vote and then just re-vote on the new total?
Yeah.
We can, yep, I was in mine, you did yours.
Well,
I'll
make a
rescind
motion to accept it as amended.
Okay, I will.
All right, all in favor, as amended. Good.
19,395.31.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, town manager, you're on.
Well, I'm just gonna hit, since we're running late this evening, I'm just gonna hit the high points of my written report. Y'all can just look at that if you like. We will be meeting with the KB cog planner on November the 14th in order to talk about what sort of services they might provide us for a subdivision and land use ordinances. Those are the items that are called for in the comprehensive plan, and the implementation committee is ready to explore those. And so that's one of the things I'll be talking about with Peter Rushton on Friday. He is also seeking someone from the state office that is now regulating marijuana to come and do a public informational meeting here, because there's just a lot of confusion, I think, locally with what those laws are and what they say. And so we thought that might be helpful, not only for the select board, but for the planning board and the interested citizens who might be interested in what's going on with that.
Let us know when.
Say, pardon?
Just let us know when.
Yes, sir, yeah. And then the week of October 7th is when the paving is going to occur on Wings Mill and Bartlett Roads. And I met last week with Pike, told them that if they were wanting to put the surfacing on those two roads in the spring, that we were going to need some sort of financial consideration, and so their representative was running that up their company flagpole. And then lastly, with the blessing of the road committee and with Jack and Gary Mahler from the budget committee, we have found a way to increase our road maintenance budget by $20,000 just by moving some monies around. So we're gonna do more road maintenance, but at no additional cost to taxpayers. And lastly, I moved into my house yesterday.
Yay.
And I paid my excise tax, and so I'm official.
So we won't see your vehicle here without.
It's got
some-
nameplates on it now, I looked at them.
Perfect. We've had someone here in the past who
I
didn't
got a
have a
couple
vehicle
questions,
registered,
Ellery.
and it was
Ask them now?
some
Sure,
town
I guess so.
office. No.
What's the story on the Depot Road with, the way the school put the curb in out there?
I met with the superintendent a couple of weeks ago, and he was going to get back in touch with their engineering firm and see if they could rectify that
They
situation.
need to get it taken care of soon, because if plow hits that, I think they're liable. They've got that
Which
right
means
out to
we
the
are.
Well, and that's not just that one. Did you see how they run it right out there? The next driveway's the same. I tell you what, they built that for Florida, but anyway.
I will, I'll follow up with the school superintendent and see if he can give me a status report on that.
And the Wings Mills Road, you just said they're gonna pave it October when?
The week of the 7th.
Are they gonna grade it before again, I hope?
Yeah, I emailed actually.
They're terrible
Yeah,
again.
I mean, I drove it 2 weeks ago, it was awful,
Oh.
and then,
That's probably, you got the same call I did.
well, Morris then went out there and graded it.
But that's not his job, that's.
It's not, but.
Right, I know he
but
did it.
thank goodness that he did, and so I reached out to them again today and said, hey, can we get that done again before this week, before the 7th?
Lost my train of thought now. Oh, why are those roads so rough after they paved them?
Which one?
All of them. They all got ripples in them.
Well, then they put the final coat on.
But it doesn't matter, that shouldn't be ripples on the base coat. I mean,
Oh, are you talking about Wings Mill and Bartlett?
the Dunn Road, they're all rough.
No, I thought the Dunn Road was pretty good. People are complaining now because people are speeding on the
Oh,
Dunn Road.
I'm sure
because
that
it's so
they're
smooth.
gonna, but it's still, for a brand-new paved road, there shouldn't be ripples in it.
It wasn't me, I drove that yesterday, I didn't feel it was
Go
on the
through.
other side.
You did on the other two?
Yeah.
That one's got them too. When you go through with a big truck, you
I
can feel
didn't
it.
see a big difference between Bartlett Road
You know,
and the Mills Road.
I just don't understand how they can pave something like that.
I don't know.
Well, I don't think they've actually paved those roads. They've just, they just chewed up the asphalt on them
No,
and
they
they
paved some
graded
of
them.
them.
Really?
You see what they're doing up in, not, just change the subject for a minute here, 225, they're up there grinding it?
But why are they doing that?
Because it's
Because,
slippery.
yeah, because they put that seal coat on.
Oh.
There's been more
wet.
accidents up there, and they're gonna leave it now until spring.
Oh,
That ought to be nice to plow.
yeah, I'll bet. That'll be a slushy
DOT
mess.
for you again.
Yeah, well, we gotta complain about that as well, and I said, you're gonna have to talk to the state about that.
About 225?
Yeah.
Yeah, you tell them it's Rome, deal with it.
We got enough to deal with. I mean.
Right.
Is that all your questions, Rick?
I think that was it.
Okay, I have a question. Now, just, we were talking about when the new sidewalk lights are going up in the village. Do the streetlights that are on the poles, do they come down after the streetlights or do they, and do we pay for those lights, as part of our streetlight package? Or is that considered a state highway related lighting?
So right now, the Friends are on the hook for the pedestrian lighting.
Sure.
But they think that there's a possibility that those lights may be bright enough onto the roadway that the street lights can be shut off, which would represent a savings to the town, but that remains to be seen.
Sure.
We want to see what it looks like.
See what it looks like first, see how they light things up. As I was saying, maybe that'd be overkill and maybe too much light.
And
That's what I'm
that is the thought, and so I'm kind of hopeful that we'll be able to turn those off, because I think those pedestrian lights will get nice mood lighting down there.
I would think so.
We'll have to leave them on all, that's the
That
only
would
thing,
save
leave
us.
them on all night, dawn to dusk to dawn.
Well, I think that's the plan anyway.
Yeah.
And
That
they're
would save
LED, so there shouldn't be much.
ideally, if we lose, I don't know how many pole streetlights there are there, but there's gotta be half a dozen.
Oh, yeah.
So that would save us, sizable amount.
A couple of them may have to say, like, corner of Ewing Road.
Well, yeah, there may be a few.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And then down by the post office.
Yeah.
But I mean, that'll be, I guess we'll address that in the coming year as the lights come up and we'll see what it looks like.
So I think we have somewhere in the neighborhood of about 45 streetlights total in the community, and we spend about $10,000 a year on electricity for those.
As we look into the LED changeover / buyout, I guess, of the streetlight systems we have in this town, let's keep in mind or look at or ask the right people about, whether or not we still need those lights on the poles down the village.
Yeah, right.
As the next year floats forward.
So speaking of LED lighting, I have a question for you guys, because I just got a letter today from the Nature Conservancy of Maine. And they have a program that will pay 75% of the cost of converting a municipal facility's lighting, both indoors and out, to LED, which, ends up paying for itself over time because there's less energy cost. Are these lights LED lights?
I think so.
I believe they are.
Okay. Do you think there'd be any value in considering something like that at the Center for All Seasons?
Yes, please.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
I think those are not LED. The other thing is indoor and outdoor. Are you talking about streetlights?
No, just lighting on the perimeter of a building.
What was the company name?
Nature Conservancy.
So it's a nonprofit, sort of quasi-governmental agency, but it's a conservation organization. Yeah, tree huggers, that's right.
I do have a question about last meeting, I guess.
No, that was last meeting. What's your question?
I see there was some work done, I was reading her notes today, no. Yes, I think it was, I don't know, I read it somewhere. Anyway, had some work done at the Old Town office, some electrical work,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and you took the money out of the select person's account. Am I correct?
Is that where it came from?
That's correct.
I think we did.
We did authorize
Why
that.
wouldn't that come out of the building and maintenance? And it just showing overdraft?
Well, I didn't know we were allowed to overdraft.
15%.
Oh.
Well, had I known with it.
Change it.
Yeah.
Well, I just don't think that's what that money's really designed for, that's why. I mean, we've got other accounts, we've got accounts that, from the rental place down there, that can offset some of that. So there's other accounts out there. I just didn't think that's where.
I didn't know that we could move money internally. I mean, the Dalton properties are its own set of accounts that are separate and apart from the
But that
old
was
town
set up
office.
for maintenance in the town of Belgrade. I believe you read that
Okay.
article.
Is it a forever article?
Yes.
Okay.
It just caught me a little off guard. I'm going, why was that like that? So that answers my question?
I think it was Michael's idea.
Well, probably was, but I'll smile.
Well, I think we were just kind of like,
Here we
okay,
go.
where could we take this from quickly, so that this can get done and we can get.
I know,
moving
but
on it.
we need
But
to-
no, yeah, I agree.
We need to keep that in mind. If something we really breaks down or rolls up, but we need to.
We need
take
budget.
on. Yeah, oh, yeah,
So,
right.
there was, and there's not on the agenda, there's no executive session on the agenda, but there is a personnel matter that came up today that I'd be interested in y'all's feedback on.
Well, we should,
And it's
say
nothing,
goodnight to Jack, say goodnight to Jack and talk about it.
it's nothing that will require a vote.
Well,
We shouldn't be talking about it if it's a personnel matter.
right.
Yes,
Thank you,
absolutely.
Jack.
Have a good night, Jack.
Take care.
See ya,
As always,
thank
thank
you.
you.
Whoa, watch this. Don't take that chair with you.
Damage the chairs there, Jack.
Let's wait for the clerk.
Hey, Jack.
I know, but I mean, I just want to clarify something right off the bat. If it is a personnel matter, we shouldn't even be hearing about it. Because we're the Board of Appeals, if this person comes to us. Remember
Oh.
that? We went through this?
Yeah, yeah.
It's not a disciplinary matter.
Okay, then it's fine. If it's a disciplinary action.
No, it's not.
Just something you don't want to talk about in public.
No, that's fine. That's good. We're good. I just want to make sure we, because went sour once here already, and I was on the other side. Wasn't good.
Feel bad about that, you don't have to keep bringing it up.
Well, you know what? She still has stuff with her. No self-confidence in herself. Okay. I make a motion, we, want us to go into... Oh, yeah, but we, does she have to put that in before she leaves?
Yeah,
What's that?
adjourn.
Well, we can't adjourn until after we get out of executive session. Yep, let's take a 5-minute break there.
All right, take a 5-minute break.
Okay, 5-minute break.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Yeah.
5 minutes.